Katie Bell vanished in the Alaskan Triangle in 2022. It's been exactly 1,095 days since she disappeared, and since then, 1,095 others have joined her. Someone goes missing every 24 hours in the Alaskan Triangle. October 11th, 2025, her sister watched another girl, Jael Hamblen, walk barefoot through killing frost and finally understood why Katie never said goodbye. I didn't know Jael Hamblen before she disappeared, but I saw her last through frost-covered windows that reminded me why I came to Alaska. I was chasing storms, chasing love, and running from everything but Sarah's weekly calls. "You're the bravest person I know," she'd tell me. Tonight, I'd have to be. The locals warned me about the Alaskan Triangle, how it hunts three kinds of people: the unlucky, the lonely, and the loved. They blamed bears, they blamed weather, they blamed anything but admit what Katie knew. That last night, she'd shaken me awake at 3 a.m. pointing at her window where frost spiraled in these impossible shapes. "Look, it's trying to tell us something." I told her that it was just ice, it was just winter. But now I know why Sarah begged me not to come here. She'd seen the same patterns in my weather station photos. October 11th, 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I never could on Sarah's call nights. My sister Sarah's quilt from Chicago wrapped me in memories of home. That charm bracelet she'd given me jingled as I pulled my coat tighter. Even the frost seemed to still at its sound. The shadow came from nowhere. One moment, empty street. The next moment, darkness moving against darkness. My weak porch light caught her like a spotlight, as if the darkness itself wanted me to see this. She walked barefoot through the snow. Each step was too precise, it was too purposeful, it was like a puppet on strings that I could not see. Time moved wrong, each minute stretching like Alaska's endless dark, and the shadow appeared between heartbeats, a darkness that knew it was being watched. My porch light caught something deliberate in its movement. It was too precise for tricks of my tired eyes. Standing there in perfect stillness was a woman, but she moved like something wearing a woman's shape, each step marking the center line with mechanical precision. My thermometer outside read -20, cold enough to kill in minutes. But her cotton pajamas never even fluttered in the wind. Her fist was clenched around something that pulsed against the dark, not like a heart. It was like the eye of a storm. My weather station training told me to help, but Sarah's bracelet turned cold against my pulse. It was warning me of something older than storms. This wasn't weather that I could track. This was wrong in the ways that made my bones sing ancient warnings. I just froze there like I'd seen Arctic foxes do before storms. Every muscle locked, barely breathing. But my rocking chair betrayed me, its creak splitting the Arctic silence like a gunshot. My fingers found Sarah's bracelet, its weather charm suddenly cold against my pulse, and praying that she hadn't heard. But in that perfect Arctic stillness, even prayers freeze. That figure froze mid-step. It was the way my weather station screens glitched before a major storm. And she swayed in place, ignoring the winds that could strip flesh from bone. Winds that I'd spent years learning to predict and fear. And when she turned, my fingers instantly found Sarah's bracelet. Her whole body moved at once. It was like a compass needle spinning toward true north. And through this murky light, I saw her eyes, white as virgin snow. It's the kind that comes before the deadliest storms. But behind that whiteness, something was tracking me. and not like the storms that I'd studied, but like something that had learned to wear the storm's skin. There's 7 minutes until frostbite in these temperatures. I'd written that warning 100 times. 5 minutes until hypothermia steals your mind. Sarah's last words before I left Chicago echoed, "You are the bravest person I know." Right now, I'd have to be. Hello? My voice crystallized between us. Each syllable was as sharp as ice. "Please, let me help you." She turned toward my voice. It was like a weather vane finding north, and those white eyes locked onto my porch light, tracking something that I couldn't see. My bracelet's weather charms froze against my pulse, their familiar shapes suddenly foreign, and her face split in a smile. It was not like a skin moving, it was like ice breaking across a lake. The sound that poured out froze my blood. A child's cry. It was distant, but it was rising. It was like something being born in the storm. I stumbled back like I had from my ex's lies. Muscle memory taking over when the mind can't process. The child's cry chased me inside, bouncing off walls that had never heard a child's voice before. Had never heard any voice but mine. But then the footsteps started. Not random or lost. No, deliberate, circling. The same way that I'd circled my empty apartment that first month alone, trying to convince myself that I still belonged here. Each step as measured as my weekly calls to Sarah. As precise as the lies I told her about being happy here. And when sunrise bleached my walls, I found the tracks. They spiraled inward, each circle tighter than the last, until they stopped directly beneath my window. It was like an invitation. Between diner shifts, I kept seeing that face in my coffee pot's reflection, just like I used to see storm patterns in my weather station screens. Sarah's weekly calls anchored me, but lately static kept creeping in, the same frequency as that child's cry. I took every graveyard shift I could get, easier to watch other people's coffee cups than my own windows, where something kept writing messages in the frost. But even at work, frost patterns appeared on the diner's windows, and they were spiraling inward like the tracks in my yard, following me, each spiral tighter than the last. It was like something counting down in a language that I used to know how to read. And that newspaper lay open on the counter, frost creeping across the headline even in the diner's heat. Local woman vanishes from locked home, and Jael Hamblen's photo stared up at me. The same dark eyes I'd been seeing in every coffee pot reflection, except here, they were still human. They were still hers. And the coffee pot slipped through my fingers. A year of perfect pours ending in a crash that scattered reflections across the floor. The sound of breaking glass morphed into that child's cry. Not a memory anymore. Something waiting in every frost spiral, in every window reflection, in every static-filled call from Sarah. That newspaper haunted my dreams. Jael's dark eyes turning white like the storm system that I'd chased too far. It was the one that cost me everything. I thought about calling the police, but who would believe me? I'd already lost one job trying to convince people a storm was more than just weather. They called me reckless, ambitious, dangerous. Sarah's calls crackled with static now. It was the same static pattern that I'd seen before that massive storm. It was the one that made me ignore the evacuation orders. It was the one that made them take my weather station keys. My charm bracelet froze against my skin, each weather charm turning to ice even under the hot diner coffee. 3 doubles in the last 48 hours wasn't enough anymore. The frost kept finding me. The manager's words finally broke me. Go home before you drop another pot. That was the first time that I'd missed a shift since the weather station. I collapsed, still dressed. Sarah's bracelet clutched like a lifeline, but sleep wasn't safety anymore. I snapped awake, standing in fresh snow, my bare feet buried past feeling. The heart-patterned pajamas that I packed away in Chicago now clung to my skin, each breath painting frost spirals in the dark, perfect circles like the tracks in my yard, like the patterns stalking my windows. Something pulsed in my grip, warm as Katie's hand that last morning when she tried to show me those frost patterns, alive as Sarah's voice through static, begging me to come home. My weather station training screamed impossible. Nothing beats this warm and killing frost. Nothing stays warm when the triangle takes it. But this wasn't just beating. It was counting footsteps between sisters. I couldn't move, but I could still observe the way that I'd been trained to track deadly storms. The wail started low. It was like wind before a killer storm. But this was all wrong. The sound, it didn't travel like it should. It didn't echo right. It was like something was bending the laws of nature. And then it shifted into a child's cry. My meteorologist mind tried to calculate the direction, the distance, the pattern, but it came from everywhere. It was bouncing off ice-clustered trees. It was vibrating through the frozen ground, the same way that Katie's voice had echoed that last time. It was the way Sarah's calls crackled now. Each step clicked forward like digital readouts, measuring, counting down. My mind fought whatever was steering me through the dark, but my training wouldn't stop. Observe, record, survive. Temperature plummeting past my instrument's limits. Wind frozen in place. Stars were blinking out like dying equipment lights. The scientist in me cataloged data while something older than storms screamed warnings in my blood. This was something wearing the storm's skin. First light bled through my window. I lay in heart-patterned pajamas, pristine despite my feet being raw with cold. I could only hear my teeth grinding, marking time like something counting backwards. And Sarah's bracelet lay in a perfect circle on my nightstand, frost spiraling from its weather charms. The marks matched my window patterns now. It matched the tracks that I'd made. My body remembered moving through the wilderness last night, but my mind couldn't recall it. The diner's fluorescent lights couldn't burn away what was coming next. Coffee pots shattered more often now. My hands were shaking from more than just exhaustion. Every reflection showed frost patterns growing closer, measuring distances I didn't want to understand. Something in me had changed that night in October, the same way that storms change after they swallow someone whole. 3 weeks of perfect pours at the diner. 3 weeks of clear phone calls with Sarah. Almost enough to believe that I was safe. The TV flickered cartoons in the dark. The same show that Katie and I watched that last night when she couldn't sleep because of the weird sounds outside. I told her that it was just the wind. My fingers found Sarah's bracelet. Its weather charm suddenly again ice cold against my pulse, the same way that they'd frozen before Katie disappeared, but this time I knew exactly what that warning meant. My eyes snapped open to darkness. It was not the blue darkness of cartoons, it was the black void of wilderness. Each step clicked forward like instruments taking readings. It was precise, it was measured, but it was inevitable. My feet mapped distances across the frozen ground, bare skin somehow numb and burning all at once. My weather training betrayed me. each law of nature breaking in precise and measured ways. The frost wrote coordinates in Katie's handwriting, while Sarah's voice crackled through the static, mapping paths between sisters lost and sisters I could still save. The wilderness wasn't just taking anymore, it was teaching, and I was learning. Something alive pulsed against my frozen fingers. My mind screamed to let it go, but this warmth, it felt like Katie's last breath. It was impossible, but it was undeniable. The wind herded me forward, each gust as precise as Sarah's weekly calls. And then there was that animal wail, and it shifted. It became that child's cry again that mapped memories I tried desperately to forget. My feet followed the sound though, toward the warmth that shouldn't exist, toward a voice that suddenly vanished with Katie into Alaska's darkness. I snapped awake in Sarah's blanket, the one that she mailed me after Katie disappeared, saying, "At least I can keep one sister safe." Now red flecks dotted the fabric right where my fingers had clutched something warm and wrong. The stains wouldn't freeze like normal blood. It was just like Katie's last footprints in the snow. But this evidence mapped a path, and I had to follow it. I fled to Sarah's mirror in my room, where I'd practiced telling her I'm fine, where I'd hidden the dark circles underneath my eyes. But no makeup could hide this red staining my hands. No lies could explain that away. The wilderness, it had marked me like it had marked Katie, not with wounds, but with proof that I could no longer deny. Each crimson stain mapped the distance between my sisters, between the lies that I told Sarah and the truth that I now could not outrun. Sarah's voice crackled through the static. Each call was breaking up like Katie's last words in the wilderness. And my weather expertise was useless now. The frost wrote warnings to me in their handwriting, mapping paths between sisters lost and sisters that I could still save. 3 years of running from storms had taught me one thing. Some patterns, they're not meant to be tracked. They're meant to be followed. My diner name tag felt wrong now. It was like pretending that these storms had never known my name. My old field notebooks came out of hiding. Their pages were crackling like frost, familiar as Sarah's bracelet against my pulse. Between pouring coffee, I mapped the patterns, where frost met flesh, where cold claimed bodies. Each disappearance matching a temperature plunge that my instruments used to predict. The wilderness wanted another vanished waitress, but it didn't know. I'd tracked storms that devoured entire towns. I'd seen nature's hunger before. And this time I knew how to read these warnings written in ice. I slept in my boots. My knots were checked like old weather equipment. My station jacket became my new armor, and Sarah's letters and storm coordinates were close to my skin. The wilderness hunted for helpless prey. I'd learned from storms. Sometimes you have to walk straight into darkness to find your way out. And the next thing I remember was the numb cold on my bare face and the feel of cotton against my skin. I opened my eyes and I could see in the almost darkness. There was a sea of frosty green surrounding me. I stared down at my bare feet, locked in place with tangled roots and thorns and shreds of fabric, cotton, stripy and heart-printed. My mind darted back to the woman in the road that I thought had to have been Jael, and to her stripy pajamas. Nature had welded us together in the dark, and my clothes with her, living with the dead. The wilderness shifted all around me. There was frost spiraling up my legs. Sarah's bracelet, the one thing still connecting me to safety, crackled with ice against my pulse. And when the chain snapped, I didn't even scream. Each charm scattered like coordinates in the snow. It was mapping a path that only I could follow now. Red stained my frozen fingers as that heart beat against my palm. It was orange as Arctic sunset and precise as weather patterns. Each pulse matched Katie's last footprints. Each tremor echoed Sarah's breaking voice. If I dropped this heart, I'd be just another data point in the triangle's calculations. That wail twisted into a child's cry, and I realized it was Katie's pitch exactly. Through trees that cast impossible shadows, something moved with mechanical grace. Jael's white eyes found mine across impossible distance. Her bare feet marked coordinates I could finally read. It was not an invitation anymore. This was a transformation. This heart blazed brighter with each step that I took. It was not counting time anymore, but it was mapping it. Each beat was matching the patterns that Katie died trying to show me. I understood at last. Some wilderness doesn't just take, it teaches. It transforms. It makes you brave enough to follow it. And she was almost at the trees now, where shadows moved against the wind. With lungs full of winter, I forced out one word, Jael. And my heart thundered like incoming storms. I stood there, barefoot in pristine, heart-patterned pajamas, frost mapping new patterns across my skin. And Sarah's broken bracelet lay scattered behind me. And that was not a failure of protection anymore. That was my final lesson. The shriveled heart blazed in my palm. Each pulse was matching Katie's last coordinates. Each beat was teaching me what she died learning. Some patterns they don't warn, they welcome. They'd file me as another triangle statistic. Let them find my diner uniform folded neat as Sarah's last letter. Let them study the frost patterns that I'd map, the heart that defied their instruments. They never understand what Katie always knew, what I finally learned. Sometimes the bravest thing, it's not surviving the wilderness. The bravest thing is becoming a part of it. I walked into the darkness on my own terms. I was following patterns that only the brave could read. The cold welcomed me like family. It was not taking me, it was teaching me. Katie had started this mapping, and now I would finish it. The Alaskan Triangle claims someone every 24 hours. Most are filed as missing. Some are found, at least their bodies. And then there's Hannah Bell and the true case of Jael Hamblen. They say Hannah abandoned her diner shifts, left town like any other waitress. But her uniform was laid out perfect as Sarah's last letter, name tag still pinned above the heart. And beneath her floorboards, they found three things. A broken bracelet with frost-cracked weather charms, a journal of impossible storm patterns, and a shriveled mass that, according to lab reports, beat for 6 days after they found it. Local tribes speak of shapeshifters called kushtaka. They lure prey with children's cries. But Hannah's frost patterns mapped something else. A wilderness that doesn't just take, it transforms. And her last journal entry reads, Katie knew, some patterns you don't survive, you become them. What truly happened to Hannah remains a mystery, but her last journal entry suggests that she wasn't running away, that she was finally walking towards something. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't surviving the wilderness, it's choosing to become a part of it. What dark secrets do you think lurk within the Alaskan Triangle? Did Hannibel's journey reveal a hidden truth, or is there something even more sinister at play? Drop your wildest theories and any other chilling experiences you've had in the comments below. And if this story sent shivers down your spine, please share it with fellow thrill seekers and hit that subscribe button for more bone-chilling tales. The darkness is waiting. Are you truly ready to uncover its mysteries with me and our awesome community? Our thoughts and prayers go out to Jael's family and friends who have never lost hope in the search for Jael Hamblen in the Alaskan Triangle. See you in the next video.